All right, so our next topic in this conversation, it has to do with cameras. Cameras on, cameras off. And before we even get into the stats, I have to tell you, Ken, my thinking has evolved on this in the past couple of years because, I come from the video conferencing world, and one of the things we were always teaching and preaching to the group has to do with presence, like I mentioned earlier. And so we need to see you. We need to hear you. You need to be on camera. You need to speak on camera. I've done trainings with superintendents where, they didn't want to be on camera, didn't want to speak. And it was like everybody at least once. And so I was a very strong proponent for cameras on always, because if you were going to be in person, we would see you. So on video, we should see you as well. And I have a bit more nuanced take on that now. I'd like to hear your starting position on cameras on, cameras off. Can
I
you?
was just thinking, like you said, it evolved. I'm thinking it devolved. Like, what's the opposite of evolve?
I don't know. It has evolved.
What I'm hearing, like I'm like dangerous ground potentially. So yeah, I'm going to be curious to hear how you navigate. Knowing you and working with you, I kind of know where you're going to go with that. But I'm thinking like in a situation where certain people could have their camera on and they're just looking for any little way that they can say that they don't have to turn their camera on. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on that. I'm definitely not an always person on anything.
You mentioned
So
earlier you are a logical person and open to listening. I know you're a very good listener.
right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
So
I
let-
would say like, yeah, my preference would be like, okay, if we're gonna have a conversation, let's have the camera on. But if you were like, hey, look, here's what's going on here, I'm not gonna be like, well, too bad, turn your camera on.
you're a logical person. Let's start with some stats first before we get
Okay.
into just how I feel about something. So before we get to feelings, let's start with some stats. Are you okay with that?
Okay.
So from this, 62% of remote workers prefer to be on camera during video calls. That's over half. That seems good. 67 selected that it was easier to communicate when they can see someone's expressions. Other reasons for favoring the on-camera meetings encourages me to look work ready. So there can be something to be said for that. I don't feel so isolated, 16%. I don't want to be negatively judged for having my camera off. So I think that, did I hear some judgment in your
Some
voice?
shame. Like I'm gonna shame you to turn your camera on.
So, but overall, more than half, there is a preference for that. And as I,
Yeah, and just to be clear, like so 62% said they prefer their camera on, and out of that 62%, 67% of those people said it's because they like to be able to see the other person that they're talking to. I would definitely put myself in that camp. I just think there's a lot to be said with body language, and you mentioned your grandkids earlier. It's like there's certain things like you're like, I want to see what they look like when I say this. And sometimes it's not an excited thing. It's like I'm about to drop a bomb, and I want to see how this is going to be taken to know how to navigate this going forward. The work ready one does surprise me a little bit, but I guess I could see like some people feeling like and see I'm not like a dress up type person or anything. Like I'm like who's there's some crazy senator or House of Representatives guy. I think he's from Pennsylvania too. Like he like wears hoodies and and like he gets a lot of flack for it. But I'm like, yeah, that would totally be me. I would be like, yeah, I'm not putting a suit on to come to the Congress. I'm sorry. Like that's not going to change anything. But I could see some people being I know there's a lot of church people. Like I go to a church that it's very like wear what you want to wear, but there's some people that like still like to wear the suit. They just feel like that makes them feel like they're ready for church. So I can get that, and I'm not surprised it's only 4% because I think that would be a small amount of people. Isolated for sure. I think seeing somebody on video would help with that, and then negatively judged. Yeah.
okay, so those were our camera on people. Now, the camera off people had some different reasons for not wanting to be on camera. They said they don't want to dress up to be on camera. So they did not want to dress up. They also, these were our, what would we call them in the old days? We were like the kinesthetic, when I taught school, we would say the kids that like to learn and move around. So some people like to move around. And so they want to have the camera off. They're listening audio only because they'll want to be walking or moving during the meetings or during the calls. 18% of respondents said being on camera takes too much energy, and 17% said they did not like to look at themselves on camera. And another 15% worried their environment might not be perceived at, or might be perceived as unprofessional. I can totally get that if you don't have a dedicated space, like because some people work for home or they're in a spot, or sometimes it's temporary and they don't have a good backdrop. They can put the virtual background up, which was a nice advancement in the collaboration tools to be able to do that, to where you're like, okay, I literally have no place where I'm connecting in my car. I don't want you to see I'm in my car. I'm going to put up my virtual background. But those are some of the reasons for having camera off. Strong reactions to any of those? Or are you going to do your, like, if you were in person, would have to be here? What
Don't
should?
be trying to like say what I'm going to, don't be trying to say what shtick I'm going to use. Okay. That's just going to make me go in another direction. No, what I was going to say is I should preface what I'm about to say first by saying all of these are legitimate. When I look at some of these, I'm like, these could be excuses for people, and I feel like you brought up where the technology is at today. I feel like there's lots of like, okay, well, this goes away, this can go away, this can go away, like the environment perceived as unprofessional. Use a virtual background. Check. Don't can't have that excuse. They don't like to look at themselves on screen. Yeah, turn that off. Don't look at yourself on the screen. You can. I would say most of the applications you can be like, I don't want to be able to see myself. Prefer to move around and not sit during calls. This is where I would be like, okay, we're in a conference room and you're just up walking around while we're all in a meeting. I'm sorry, you're not doing that, unless you're the presenter up there. And I would also say, like, you could get a camera where you set it up so you have, like, you can walk back and forth behind your desk if you want to, and everybody will still be able to see you. And I can guarantee you they're going to be having a few things that they're saying internally to each other about, like, look at Freak Show over there walking all around the whole time we're having this meeting. So I think that, the dress and prep thing too. I mean, that's kind of one of those things where I guess it depends on where you work. We only have to be dressed a certain way. And it's not even a requirement then. I mean, I guess it's a self-imposed one. It's like we don't have a certain dress code that we have to wear. I get where some of these are coming from. And again, they could be legitimate, but I think the technology is at a place now for a lot of these where they're off the table.
And so part of my nuance is I have had situations where people just didn't have capacity, right? They could not, they're like, when they have the camera on, just that reflection of themselves back, and not all of the applications have, a way you can turn off self view, because you can turn your camera off, but then you can't transmit. So there's a difference between, like, can I transmit so you can see me, but I'm not seeing myself. So that was one that they were studying. When the Zoom fatigue started to come out, and so the researchers at Stanford were looking at that, and so that was one of the things that they were trying to measure, trying to understand, was the additional cognitive load. This is where I'm like, okay, I could see, like, if you're like, I just can't deal with, I've got the content I'm trying to deal with, whatever the job at hand is. But in addition to that, I'm trying to make sure I stay on camera. I'm trying to make eye contact with the camera. I'm trying to also read your expression. So I have to look at two different places. Whereas if we're in person, when I look at your eyes, I'm also getting, you can see me, I can see you, but in video, you're splitting it between the camera and then also looking at the other people. And so they started looking at things like that. They started looking at, when we're in the video conferences, video chats, like the size of the faces being that close to you can actually trigger kind of like an anxious response, because it's like you're in, yes, like that, you're in my bubble. move away. At the same time, as I mentioned, I am very interested in group development. And the groups that I work with know that it is, cameras on is our default because we are going to be here, and that's the presence of we are here together, we're working together, we're collaborating, we're brainstorming. But if you have extenuating circumstances, so it's not the default that your camera is off, but let's say your dog died 2 days ago, you have had family emergency, there is, something going on to where you're like, I can't present myself in a way that I need to present, but I can still be in the group and I can receive information. In situations like that, I'm like, yeah, to tie it back to our best practice of communicating with your manager, communicating with whoever is running the group, let them know what's going on. So don't just show up and be like, I'm turning my camera off and this is how it's going to be. Not that way at all. So my nuanced position on cameras on and off goes into that larger pool of best practices. And I think you said it's not an always, right? So it's like what's best for the group, what's best for you as the individual, and did you communicate your needs and so that others can understand?
Yeah, and I think as a leader, you have to kind of pick up on that. If they're one-off things, I mean, you kind of just have to be like, well, if they don't want to put their, I don't know what the situation is, but if it's a reoccurring thing, it's a group that gets together often. I think the same thing for like, just people they don't like to talk in front of other people. So you get that a lot too, where it's like, okay, we're going to go around the group, everybody share something. And it's like, if you're somebody that does not like to do that, you're just like, I hope this, like, can the power please go out before they get to me so I don't have to, so it's like being cognizant of that too, to be like, hey, you know what? If you don't want to unmute your microphone and talk, that's okay. We really want everybody to contribute. Maybe you just want to put it in the chat. And some people are going to be like, I'm not comfortable putting my thoughts out into the group chats. Like, can you at least share them with me personally? You want people to engage. And, some people are just like, I'm just not ready it's a big step for me to even be like connected into this group.
And Ken, I think being such an introvert is a superpower for me because I don't like to get the question and then 5 seconds later turn to my partner and tell them something. I need more lead time. So another way that in groups that I work with, preference camera on, option camera off. I also, if I do know before we get started, if there are certain things that I want to hear from everyone about, I make sure to send that in an email or message, let them know beforehand. So my introverts have time to think because I know that's also going to be a big part of if they're going to and trust that I'm not going to call on them first off. So we're like, okay, I need a volunteer. And then these are the next three people I'm going to hear from. So different ways to signal to the group it's also safe to show up. And so some of those things I also do when I work in person, but definitely when we're remote, because it is, for some people, it really is daunting to turn your camera on and to speak up in that group. So we want to do everything we can to make sure it is a safe environment because we started off with the stats of it 62%. Yes, it's a majority, but then that does leave us almost 38% that prefer to have those cameras off. So how do we make sure that it's a safe environment for them?
All right, so I think we're ready to maybe move to the next part. We have an example of a fully remote company, and then talking about how they deal with the challenges of asynchronous work and communication.